for our Socratic seminar, How Cool Works in America Today, starting with question 1. What is the exigence that drives David Brooks to write his op-ed? And what tone is Brooks attempting to establish with his audience?
Okay.
That was a good
So, what I noticed for the first part of the first question is that the article was published July 25th, which makes me think that maybe on Independence Day, July 4th, there's all this celebration of America and how America's great and we're awesome. And then maybe he had some opinions like, well, maybe we're not. Maybe we're not there. And so he was thinking about what was making the changes in the country. And that led him to think about the people who are woke, as discussed on the page 3, I guess. And then he thought about, well, what makes somebody woke? How did this emerge? And so then I thought maybe he traced his thinking back to where that emerged from, which is cool. Then he thought about that book that he was reviewing.
I wonder if this wasn't also provoked by Joel Dinnerstein having published his book.
That's what I
really want to
thought.
know when that book was published, because this is almost, it's a review and then a riff off of a review of the Dinnerstein book. So I wonder if that has anything to do with that. It'd be worth checking.
I got it. Every turn.
I noticed, I did sort of some back research, so I wanted to know about, I wasn't familiar with David Brooks before this. So, and I found out, he was pretty much a moderate. His son went into the Israeli army, different things like that. So he's very diverse, I felt like. But what I almost felt like there was he saw a cool vacuum, that there wasn't enough people that he, that he had noted as cool, sort of self-sufficient, unaware of their coolness. If that wasn't what sparked it, was, they were spawned after the war. So the things that are happening in America today, he's not seeing that same evolution of the coolness. Sorry, my throat.
I agree. The first thing when I read it is for exigence was like, why did he write it? So to me, it's like he's writing a book review, and he found the book maybe entertaining or interesting and some interesting concepts, and so he wants to persuade all of us that it's a book worthy of a read, I think, and it's very observant tone. He observes all the different, passes it down through different ages, through different characters, and then adds the woke quality. So it's kind of becomes sort of a collaborative searching for this book and why he wrote it and why we should read it. So I thought very practically he was just trying to, I don't know if it was his assignment to read this book and pass it on, but he's definitely reviewing it. So, yes.
I agree, I kind of thought it was, we're looking at maybe this is a book review, but then I had to look back and I'm thinking all the things I've ever read in the New York Times, someone that's an op-ed columnist. So I tried to think, what else is he trying to say? I was looking at his tone, I thought, first of all, is he trying to, it was almost kind of nostalgic for me, because mentioning of those names, I'm old, so I can totally be okay about that, but, and it was almost like he was bringing me in. And I'm like, wow, that's right, that's kind of what I would think, or that's kind of what I would think. And then to talk about what was today, I thought he's looking at today and saying, cool is gone as we used to define it. We don't have those detached rebels, because to me that's a big part of what's cool. It's someone who doesn't care because they're willing to stand outside, even today. That's for another question, but I don't think they are mutually exclusive. But in trying to maybe justify his concept or whoever's concept what he was trying to evaluate was the woke universe.
I thought it was interesting too how he talks about the role that social media plays in all of this, and how when we think of cool as being detached, and now we live in a culture where people, celebrities, people who we used to be kept at an aloof distance, we're seeing their lives played out on social media, and does that take away from some of the cool factor? And then he gets into that discussion about being woke. So
I want to be a gentleman that you go with your hands up before mine. But I have to be next, because what you said is something I want to piggyback on.
That was like a
Sparkle
flicker
point.
mask right there. I like that.
Sparkle point.
So I just wanted to point out that I believe the exigence really exists in the last paragraph.
God, you
So-
still not thinking?
We can pass.
We share it, right?
We can share it, we'll share it between us, right? And it's really that I feel like that he is asserting that cool is gone and woke is on its way out. And so what is next? So I think the exigence is really to propel people to think ahead, that we have to redefine, because both of these are definitely rare and on their way out. And indefinable in terms of what the political state that we were in. I mean, he establishes that in a few paragraphs ahead. And I just think he wants us to look beyond, to find a different way to respond politically, as a culture. Okay.
And thank you. I totally agree with what she said. Identified the same exact paragraph, and it didn't really start clicking for me until I read what it said. And from my standpoint, he talks about cool as, of course, being that initial response to things that were going on socially, and that form of behavior, as we knew it, those who grew up in the 20th century, is now morphed into, I think he said, wokeness or wokeness. And I didn't think about it necessarily being on the way out, but that it is the current version of cool for this generation of people. And again, like you said, eventually in a few more years, it'll be another catchphrase or buzzword or aesthetic, so to speak, that'll replace being woke, or being awake, much the way cool came into existence. Also, so.
Thank you. Towards the end, when you're talking about that section, talking about being woke on the last page, I noticed that in those last few paragraphs, the tone to me becomes a little bit more urgent because the sentences have more punctuation, they're a little bit shorter than the rest of the article. And I'm just kind of wondering what he is trying to show by that and what you guys think about that.
Well, I think he's putting an urgency on this concept of woke, whether it's dead, dying, on its way out, soon to be on its way out. I think the second to last paragraph does that very well, where he's comparing the two, and if you notice, he's using semicolons suddenly. It's very short, it's repetitive. And so I think that, I was trying to think of the right tone word for that, and I think you did a good job with that. But he's putting this urgency on the idea of being woke almost to underlie maybe this change he wants to see in society that we don't have right now. I don't know exactly.
I think too, going along with that last paragraph, that the short sentences, it's how woke is. It's in your face. It's short. It's like can be violent. It's immediate. It's marching. It's this and that, and it's angry sometimes. And so I think that comes out of that, and then I think he kind of pulls back and says, "I'm not sure this is going to last because it may burn itself out. So what could be next?"
I think that the tone definitely shifts. I think maybe one of you two mentioned that he starts out kind of nostalgic, and he uses. But he talks about how the cool person is stoical, which I know sometimes stoic can have a negative connotation, but I think in this sense it's more positive. Emotionally controlled. I think most of us want to be emotionally controlled, not too eager or too needy. So it seems like it starts with he starts talking about cool in a positive way, but then it shifts because in the third to last paragraph he says that he's comparing that to woke, saying that woke is to be radically aware and justifiably paranoid. It is to be cognizant of the rot pervading the power structures. And so I think that his shift in tone, where it starts to be more negative when discussing cool, it's politically detached. It kind of shifts how all of our mindset has changed from cool used to be, you know, our goal, but now all of us should change that. You know, it's okay that we once thought that, but now we need to all shift kind of our tone or our attitude towards the subject, and now look at woke as more of the positive ideas, I guess.
Or perhaps that, you know, when he talks about the general disgust with institutions, that producing new collective action, that maybe being cool and being woke are not sustainable because we change, and the more we change and the more we grow as a society, we have different interests. Like, nobody can agree to anything like a political platform anymore because we're so diverse and we're so different that maybe both these are on the way out for something else, but that nothing's sustainable because we change so much. And it's only been recently that there have been like marches and things like that. Before it was, let's protest by, you know, getting online. And our protests from the 60s were where people were cool and people rebelled, and, you know, the folk music of the time and things like that was different because people actually got out and did something. And then it came to a point where people didn't do anything except sit in the comfort of their living rooms and get online and protest that way, which didn't do anything. So finally we have people doing something different. But I think his tone goes from being nostalgic, like was said, and to almost angry and kind of fed up.
And this is final comment.
I worry, I think he's intending to make the somewhat cerebral, typical New York Times op-ed reader worry. Because if he suggests that endorsing Kid Rock is being woke, I can think of nothing else as more designed to push the buttons of the typical New York Times reader. So it's very kind of calculating use of the word woke that may wake up the people that are most likely to be reading these, at least the subscribers.
People on the outside, give them a hand.